Think about it. We spend over a decade of our lives in school, clocking in more than 15,000 hours by the time we graduate. But what if we've been measuring success all wrong? Today, we're going to dive into a really powerful blueprint for education that shifts the entire goal from just performing well to truly flourishing as human beings. Okay, let's get right into it. So let's start with the most basic question of all. What is the real point of all those years in a classroom? Is it just a race for the best grades, to get into a good college, to eventually land a good job? Well, the framework we're exploring today argues that if that's the whole story, we're not just missing the point. We're actually building a system that can lead to anxiety, burnout, and a deep, deep disconnect from why we're even learning in the first place.
You ever have that feeling like you were just running in place during your own education? Well, that's the exact feeling this material tackles head-on with a really powerful metaphor, the education treadmill.
And wow, this image just captures the problem perfectly, doesn't it? For so many students, school becomes this hamster wheel of homework, tests, and extracurriculars. They're just pushed to run faster and faster, always chasing the next score, all while being completely blindfolded to the huge question of why. The system becomes, as they call it, purpose blind. It optimizes for what's easy to count, not what actually counts.
And this right here, it just lays that disconnect bare. On the left, you see what we typically measure, test scores, how fast you can recall things, sheer memorization. But on the right, that's what we all say we want for our kids: wisdom, character, resilience, deep, genuine understanding. There's this massive gap between the metrics we're all chasing and the actual outcomes we hope for.
Okay, so if that's the problem, how do we get off this crazy treadmill and onto a path with the real destination? Well, the source proposes a completely different way to build an educational system from the ground up. Let's take a look at the blueprint. Now, the blueprint is built on this classical concept called maqasid ash-sharia. And hey, before you get caught up on the terminology, it is absolutely crucial to understand how it's being used here. This is not about religious doctrine. I want you to think of it more like a timeless ethical design philosophy, almost like a set of universal principles for building better systems. Anything from legal codes to school curriculums that are designed to protect human well-being.
So what's the actual foundation? Well, this framework is anchored by these 5 essentials. But think of them as the 5 core pillars of a flourishing life. Having a sense of purpose and faith, your physical and mental well-being, developing a sharp and curious mind, building strong family and community bonds, and having the resources you need to thrive. These aren't just subjects you sprinkle in. They're the non-negotiable design specs for the entire school. And this is the really radical idea. See, most schools start with skills and metrics, right? And then maybe they'll add a character education class later on, kind of sprinkling some values on top like cake decorations. This framework flips that script completely. It starts with those core values, and every single learning objective, every test, every class has to exist within the protective boundaries of those 5 essentials. It is a total paradigm shift.
Okay, I know, this all sounds great in theory, but here's where it gets truly groundbreaking. This framework doesn't just talk about qualities like resilience and wisdom. It actually claims we can measure the very things we've always been told are immeasurable.
This quote just nails it. We all know that kid, right? The one who is brilliant, has straight A's, but struggles with anxiety or can't handle the slightest bit of constructive criticism. The system we have values their performance, but it completely fails to see their fragility. And why? Because if you can't measure something like resilience or intellectual humility, it just doesn't get prioritized.
So how in the world do you measure the immeasurable? Well, you create new tools. Instead of just relying on grades, this framework introduces brand new KPIs. For example, a faith resilience index doesn't just test what a student believes, it measures their ability to navigate really hard questions without their whole worldview shattering. Or a psychological safety index that directly tracks whether a student feels like they belong and are safe. All of a sudden, these qualities we thought were invisible, they become visible. And when you can see them, you can actually nurture them.
And when you start measuring this new way, you start to cultivate 2 very different kinds of students. The source gives them 2 really powerful names, the performer and the transformer.
So on one side, you have the performer. They look absolutely perfect on paper, like a porcelain doll of achievement, but their identity is incredibly brittle. They get defensive when they're challenged, and their self-worth is totally tied up in being right. But on the other side, you have the transformer. They might not always have the perfect score, but they are built to last. They have intellectual humility, a growth mindset. They're seeking truth, not just validation.
And why is that? It's because transformers are what they call adaptive learners. Just look at this spectrum. On one end, you've got learners whose identity is so fused with being right that they resist or even attack any new information that challenges them. But way over on the other end, you have the adaptive learners, the transformers. They see a challenge to their beliefs as a gift. They can literally reorganize their entire understanding in a matter of hours because they are more committed to growing than they are to being right.
So all of this, it's all building to the ultimate point of this entire framework. We need to completely rethink what real understanding even means.
And this is the core takeaway. For centuries, we might have been measuring the wrong thing entirely. Traditional schools reward performance, basically your ability to repeat back facts. But this framework says no. Real understanding is about transformation. It's measured by your ability to update your views, to integrate new evidence, and to detach your ego from your ideas. It's the difference between having a static library of facts in your head and having a living, evolving mind.
And this is a fantastic illustration of how you would actually assess it. Look at this exam question about suffering. A low score goes to the student who just gives a canned, memorized answer. But the high score? That goes to the student who shows their intellectual journey. The student who can say, you know, I used to think this, but after looking at this new evidence, my understanding has shifted. It rewards the process, not just the product. Because the goal isn't just arriving at a destination, it's valuing the journey of discovery itself.
And let's be real, that journey of discovery is almost never a straight line. In fact, this framework identifies 7 distinct stages of resistance we all go through when our core beliefs get challenged, from simply ignoring the new data to attacking the source and then hopefully slowly integrating it. A truly great education doesn't just give you new facts, it gives you the self-awareness and the tools to navigate this resistance and come out wiser on the other side.
And so that leaves us with this final, powerful question to think about. What would our schools and what would our children actually look like if we measured not just their ability to repeat what they've been told, but their courage and their capacity to grow? What if we valued transformation over performance? It's a question that could genuinely change everything. Thanks for joining me.